Welcome to SEC Football Live here, of course, on the 440 Sports Network. That is Michael Bratton from That SEC Podcast, and I am Braden Gall. And it is great to be here with you guys on what I assume for most of you in the Southeast is a very snowy, wintry Wonderland Tuesday. I know my children have been home for 4 straight days, and they're not going back anytime soon. But you know what? Sledding is fun. And howdy cousins to everybody out there. Yes. So how's everybody doing? So
yeah, I mean, I'm doing great. We're snowed in too. No small children, just dogs. So they handle it quite all right. I'm not suffering like you. I enjoy it.
No. So I love the snow, and my daughters love the snow. The problem is that in Tennessee, they grow out of snow gear way too fast. So you can't just you don't need to buy the gear every year. And so it's always hit or miss on what gear we have for the kid. Like for the 7-year-old this year, we've got great pants and gloves, but the boots are out of date and they don't fit anymore. So the boots are, but that means the 5-year-old has great boots. So the 5-year-old's feet are great, but the 7-year-old's legs are freezing. So we got to layer up, and it's just. But the sledding is awesome. We're going sledding later this afternoon, and we're here to talk SEC football. So today on the show, I had a long conversation with a guy who covers Oklahoma football on the 440 Sports YouTube page. Head on over there. We're doing deep dives into every single team all offseason long, all different types of stories. So there you go. Florida is as familiar with snow as it is bowl games. It's only been a couple of years. And so we're going to
soon we forget the Las Vegas Bowl.
That's right.
Kicking a field goal as time expires to keep the scoring streak alive.
Yeah, Michigan State head football coach Jonathan Smith remembers all about it. So I will say we're going to talk Oklahoma at the end of this. I had a long conversation with Josh McQuiston, who's covered the Sooners for a very long time. I know you had a chance to check out that video. If you have not seen it, go learn about the Sooners. We'll talk a little bit about the Sooners and the state of the program and where they're at the end of the show. We're going to rank some of these coaches. We've got Brent Venables, Steve Sarkisian. You've got Jeff Lebby. You now got Kalen DeBoer. You've got Mike Elko. All these new coaches are now in the league. It looks like we've got the 16 coaches that are set that are going to be in the league in 24. So we'll take a look at how we would rank these guys throughout the course of the show. But we'll start with Kalen DeBoer, of course, because I think there's and sort of how we evaluate what makes a good coaching candidate in 2024. It's a little bit different these days. So first of all, your thoughts, Michael, on how fast the athletic department moved on this. Greg Byrne deserves a lot of credit for having somewhat of a plan in place. I don't think he was their first choice, but he was damn near top of the list and a damn near good option. So, and we'll get to why, but I assume that you're impressed with how Alabama has handled this and how quickly it worked.
Not at all. Down to 5th or 6th option as per usual. All these guys said no. It's funny how people say that. In less than 48 hours, they had a coach. I mean, that doesn't even add up. You know, you could, that makes no sense. But no, I wished it would have went 3 weeks. That would have been much better for me.
For content.
For the Feinbaum show, which little teaser, I'll be on that here in a couple hours at 4 Eastern, 3 Central. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of disappointed at how quickly the whole damn thing. I mean, I tweeted out, it was kind of a joke, but not really. Imagine, you're on a break from your phone or what have you. Your new year, you're trying to not be on your phone all the time. And Saban's your coach on Monday. That's when you took your break. Then you pick up your phone on Saturday and they tweet out the graphic to welcome Coach DeBoer. You'd say, what in the hell happened here? It just, I don't know. It is a credit to them for finding a very qualified coach very quickly, but it's just weird how quick the whole thing went from the greatest college coach of all time is in the rearview mirror, so to speak.
Well, but here's the funny thing. He's not really, actually. Liquid Flames, do you think they were planning this for a while and had a short list already in mind? I would argue if you have an athletic director and if you're a program of even just top 50 status and your athletic director does not have a break glass in case of emergency list in his desk, then he's not doing his job. Now, it doesn't mean you can have communications with them all the time, but you can back channel to agents. You can kind of understand that these guys all know each other. All these coaches are buddies. All the assistants talk like school children. So they all kind of know who would say yes or no, even kind of if it's unofficial, right? And again, I said this on last week's show when we reacted in real time to Saban retiring. If I felt the vibes that Saban could retire, which I've said on this show all season, I would not be surprised if Nick Saban retired at the end of the year. If I could feel those vibes from here, don't tell me that Greg Byrne and the boosters didn't feel it as well. And so they were prepared. They had a short list. They worked down that list very quickly. It helps that Jimmy Sexton is going to get somebody paid. in a big way. I don't think he was their first option, but I don't think that they asked too many folks before they got to him. This is a guy who just brought a team to the national championship, and we're going to get to in a second. Sort of checks as many boxes as you can in 2024 going into a coaching situation where he may be a total failure or he may win national championships. We don't know, but we are all guessing at this. But you can check a lot of boxes, Mike, with Kalen DeBoer. So,
well, I don't recall who wrote it. But I remember, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm some DeBoer insider or anything, but someone credible, it may have been Feldman or something like that, but basically he said there was an opening that, and I think they may have been talking about Texas A&M. I've been meaning to talk to Billy Lucci about that, but I believe he got an offer from A&M. He said he wasn't interested, but for obvious reasons, they were trying to win a national championship. But the point, I read somewhere where he passed on basically all opportunities. He didn't even consider them because he was made aware that Michigan was going to open. They were going to target him, which is not open yet, but or Alabama with Nick Saban retiring. And this was months ago. So I clearly think they knew this was a possibility.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, obviously. And what's interesting is, as we told you guys, names like Dabo and Kiffin were never really on the table. They're just not on the table. Now, we do know that Ryan Grubb, offensive coordinator, who was interviewed for the offensive coordinator position for Texas A&M last year, turned down the job. So these guys have all been hot. These guys have all been hot commodities on the coaching circle for market for a while. And we're going to get to how he can build a staff. But if he ends up with Ryan Grubb as his offensive coordinator and Kane Womack as his defensive coordinator, who's been the head coach at a program the last 3 years at South Alabama, record-breaking 10-win season 2 years ago, top 30 in every major defensive statistic, I am going to make a very easy case that I think Alabama's play callers they went from league average last year with Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele to two of the best, one of the best combinations in the conference with Kalen DeBoer calling plays. Maybe it's Ryan Grubb, but Kalen DeBoer with Kane Womack. I think, again, if you're looking for checking boxes as to why Kalen DeBoer will find success or be the right guy, I don't know what box he misses outside of SEC culture fit, which, again, wasn't a factor when Nick Saban took over at LSU. It's just not it's not as big a factor as people realize.
Boy was stealing signs, they're saying in the comments.
If you steal signs, that's like every baseball game. Like everybody is trying to steal signs.
I've never watched South Alabama in my life unless they played SEC. But someone in the comments, so I looked it up. They gave up 52 to Texas State. That's not great. 37 to Tulane. Tulane's pretty good, right? Central Michigan gave up 34. 31. They lost to James Madison. Oh my God, gave up 31.
How many games did James Madison lose this year?
I have no idea.
One?
11-2.
Yeah, 2. They were one of the best teams in the country in the group of 5.
I never heard of them.
He's a former president of the United States, but it's not that big a deal. Don't worry about it. Okay, so then I guess since you're just going to poo-poo all of this stuff and not have a serious conversation, here's what I would say why Kalen DeBoer, and this does not mean he's going to be successful, but why Kalen DeBoer is a hot commodity and why he is a good fit and why he's as about as good as you could do. Listen, I would have hired Dan Lanning if you could have. It sounds like that wasn't possible. Dan Lanning's the only one. He's Kalen DeBoer with a little bit more physicality and some deep ties to the SEC. That's the only difference between the two of them. He's a defensive guy, obviously, as well. Kalen DeBoer, maybe the most brilliant offensive mind in all of college football. If he's not, he's tied with Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin amongst the top 3 or 4 or 5 names in all of college football. Right?
You didn't mention Heupel.
Heupel's, I think Heupel's,
how dare you?
I think Heupel's a tier down from that. I think his offense is a little bit more predictable, but he's evolving. The guys that are, again, one of the best play callers, one of the best offensive minds in all of college football. Number 2, he's won everywhere he's been. He's never not won. He won championships at Sioux Falls at a lower level. He's won at Fresno State. He's won at Washington, played in the national championship game, and, of course, had the best offensive and the best season in Indiana football history, basically. But, by the way, with Kane Womack just a couple of years ago. So,
could you argue that at Fresno, though, he had an NFL quarterback? At Washington, he's going to have a future NFL quarterback?
That he did, and he got the most out of him. If you look at Penix with DeBoer and Penix without DeBoer, there's very big differences. And Jake Haener is not an NFL quarterback. So
didn't he get drafted?
He's not even like close to a starting spot in the NFL quarterback. So if he's a
that's
journeyman,
how you define a quarterback, though, isn't it?
I would. Jake Haener is not an NFL quarterback. Caleb Williams is an NFL quarterback. Anyway, the winning is you can't question the winning. You can't question the offensive production. And if he builds a staff with Ryan Grubb and Kane Womack, you can't argue staff building, although he didn't draw Robinson back from Georgia. But it looks like he's going to retain a few people, right, off the Alabama staff. It certainly helps that Nick Saban is still like lingering, which is a weird part of this whole thing. But here's the other thing that I think is most important that people don't realize. And it's a huge question in the SEC. Can you recruit in the SEC? Well, aren't we sort of, and you've argued this a lot on this show, Mike, that we are in a different time of, it's not just 25 guy recruiting classes every single year, and that's all that matters. It's about roster management, right? Portal, NIL changes the balance of power. Well, by all accounts, and what I've learned sort of digging in over the years with him in Washington, is that Washington's NIL infrastructure and collective infrastructure was as good as anybody's in the Pac-12. That they were going to be among the best in the Big Ten at managing their roster because they had committed to all the things you have to do behind the scenes to build a great roster. Oregon's the only other team, supposedly, in the Pac-12 that is competitive with Washington when it comes to this stuff, which is a direct reflection of the head coach. And so if you're going to say, can he recruit in the SEC? Fair question. But it looks like he's embraced the modern rules of college football, something that Nick Saban hated with every fiber of his being, and is partly why he walked away. So I'm not sure what other box you can check going into a job than what Kalen DeBoer checks. And I'm not suggesting he's going to win a damn thing. I'm just saying he checks all the boxes.
That Haener was a 4th-round pick. I just looked it up. I'm just saying.
Okay, I'm not saying he wasn't good, but why was he good? Maybe Kalen DeBoer had something to do with it. I mean,
possibly.
the guy's been a winner. He's never not been a winner. You can't argue that. He's won everywhere he's ever been. His offenses have been elite everywhere he's ever been. I mean,
I watched Jeremy Pruitt shut him down. That's pretty devastating. Indiana bowl game, but no, I mean
Indiana players. Give me a break.
Yep, that's true. Indiana players like Michael Penix, but
former Tennessee commitment.
that's what I hear. I've heard that once or twice.
Oh yeah.
Was there a question in there? Could they have done it? No, I mean I don't really think short of Kirby Smart. I don't think they could have done much better.
Okay, so then you're not like everything you're saying here is sort of pushing back and being critical of this. Oh, Alabama could have gotten somebody better. Oh, Kane Womack's not that great. Oh, his quarterbacks were NFL. Like nothing you've said has been positive about Kalen DeBoer. So I'm asking, what is it that's like? What else could he be? What else could be on his resume that would convince you, even though you just changed your mind and said, oh, actually, I think it's as good as they could have done. Like I'm just confused where you stand on this.
No, I'm just taking the other side here and making points. But
okay, that's good
because I don't watch South Alabama. I don't know anything about them. But I have heard they run a 4-2-5 defense. And I don't know if this is a fair criticism either, but it's not apples to apples or whatever the hell they say. But look at Mississippi State this year with bringing back their quarterback, bringing back a good running back. But those players were trained under Mike Leach, right? Obviously. And then they go to this new system, which Mississippi State fans hate Kevin Barbay now, but he came with a very, very solid track record of explosive offenses, highly successful. Now you're asking them to do something completely different. They were not capable of doing that. Alabama's going to have a top 3 roster, even with some defections. So I'm not questioning the talent, but if they go to a 4-2-5, and again, I have no idea if that's what they're going to do, but if they completely change gears from the Nick Saban defense, even with great players, I think that's a risk too. And, maybe it would be foolish to just try to get a lesser version of Nick Saban because that guy's not out there.
They don't exist.
Unless it is Jeremy Pruitt, which they can't even hire him. But, I mean, there's enough guys out there.
You mean that? Okay, so you mean run the defense?
Right, correct.
Again, I don't understand. Again, S. Hobson says, it's crazy that Alabama just can't go get top coaches now. What the fuck are you talking about?
I agree.
What are you talking about? This is the guy who almost won the national championship. I don't understand. Like, who are you supposed to hire? Dabo Swinney is not a better hire. Dabo Swinney hates the transfer portal, has not learned how to evolve. His program's on the decline. He's a very good coach in 2018. What are we talking about here? You didn't get Steve Sarkisian to leave Texas? Okay, fine.
Maybe they should have hired the TCU coach.
So he's not. Kalen DeBoer is better than the TCU coach.
Oh, he went to the national championship too, Braden. Well, he must be elite.
And look what happened to Sonny Dykes. Sonny Dykes is okay, guys, use freaking context. Sonny Dykes is a retread. Was a longtime Power 5 head coach at Cal, and then had to work his way back up. He's been tried before. This is a guy who's on a rocket ship and continues to get better jobs and continues to win because his offense is unstoppable. No matter who his quarterback is, no matter what level of football he's on, he wins championships. Dan Lanning, maybe I'd go hire him. I would not hire Lane Kiffin over Kalen DeBoer. I wouldn't do it.
I mean, these commenters, I think, are on it. I mean, his defense awful. Had elite quarterback, elite receivers.
Did you see how much
this is Auburn 2.0, brother?
Oh my God, you guys have no ability to manage context.
If he was playing in the SEC, yeah, it would have been 4th or 5th in the West, probably.
Guys, Washington's recruiting class, average recruiting class over the last 5 years was 34th in the nation. It is the lowest.
Can't recruit.
It is the lowest rated roster to make it that far outside of TCU in 30 years. And look how much better they were in their situation than TCU was. Now, they didn't have to play Georgia. I will acknowledge that is the one argument of context you can throw out there. If Washington had to play Georgia, I would be much more interested to see what would happen. But Michigan's pretty damn good. But again, who is like, again, if that was sarcasm, then I apologize. But if that, if Hobson really does believe, like, I don't understand who's the name. Like, is Bill Belichick, Vince Lombardi, like John Wooden?
Belichick was available.
John Madden's not available. Like, I don't. Who do you think is supposed to be? Who is better than the guy that again checks
Billy
every
Napier?
single box?
Gus would take it in a heartbeat.
Gus Malzahn is not a terrible idea. Billy Napier was a great winner. Never did it at the Power 5 level. Certainly never got to the national championship game. I don't. I love you guys. I love you guys so much, but I don't understand.
Does it disturb anyone else? I'm going to throw this guy's image up here in a second. Just give me a couple seconds for those.
By the way, Ill Midnight says, as an Oklahoma fan, I'm not scared of a DeBoer defense. I think that is a fair question, which is why it's so impressive that he can go pull a sitting head football coach to be a coordinator. It's not a demotion to go from South Alabama to Alabama, obviously, but going from head coach for 3 years and having one of the best seasons in South Alabama history, who's been around the SEC for like 50 years with his father, and is clearly a very good defensive coach. They are a very good defensive team at his level, and to take a guy who is a sitting head coach and get him to become a coordinator, that is the sign of a guy who has good relationships with people and can lure. That's a big boy move. Now, if that's how the defense
lost T-Rob,
fine. He went to Georgia.
Could have been the play caller.
Georgia's great. Here's the ultimate thing: can you build a staff? Is the question. And if he's got Ryan Grubb and Kane Womack, that's a really, really good start. Can he recruit? Well, I don't know. Nobody knows. We'll have to find out. But his infrastructure that he built out to manage the modern roster stuff was brilliant at Washington. It was brilliant. Can he win? Well, everywhere he's been, he wins. And is Alabama's offense going to be amongst the best in the country? Yes, he's the best, one of the best offensive minds in the country. So
not with Milroe.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you're right. Jalen Milroe and Kalen DeBoer won't.
So we know Jed Fish, the guy that replaced him, right? Arizona coach. This highly disturbs me how close he looks like Gus Malzahn. Doesn't he look just like him?
He does. He kind of does. You're right about that.
I mean, I thought that was Gus. I thought they photoshopped an Arizona.
Oh my God, that's funny. That's funny. I like that. Jed Fish, by the way, basically totally proved everybody wrong at Arizona. Nobody liked that hire, including a lot of folks that were experts like you and I in the Pac-12. So, look, The other question is, what are expectations and what should be expectations at Alabama? Because it shouldn't be that hard with a quarterback who finished top 6 in the Heisman, who was one of the most dynamic players in the country. As you just said, a roster at Alabama that's going to be top 3 in the country. There's a learning curve, and living up to Saban's standard is unfair for any human alive. But making the playoff right out of the gate is you're not trying to rebuild here at Alabama.
What if he misses the playoff? They run his ass off?
I mean, 9-3 is not going to go over well. And I'm okay with expectations being high. I don't have a problem with that.
What's your thoughts on the fact that he's an underdog in his first SEC game, while Saban was underdog 5 times in the last 209 games?
What's their first matchup? Is it Georgia? It's not Georgia, right?
Georgia at home.
Oh, it is Georgia. Okay, well,
you're not supposed to know that context, but
forget about that. Top 6 in the Heisman is not a little silly. He's one of the most dynamic players in the entire country. And he, in the fourth quarter against Georgia, against what I would call the best team in America, the Georgia Bulldogs, he played a brilliant football game, and he got better as the season went along. So I don't. Jalen Milroe is like Michael Vick Jr. So I don't know why people are down on Jalen Milroe. He's not elite. He's not number 1.
But he lost a game, so that means he's awful.
Yes, his center couldn't get him the football. It's all Jalen Milroe's fault. Here's what I would say. I'm looking at all these, and we can rank these coaches too, but I'm looking at all these coaches, and there's not too many head coach quarterback combinations in the SEC that I would take over DeBoer and Milroe. Smart and Beck. I would take DeBoer and Milroe over Kiffin and Dart. And I know what you're going to say. You think Heupel and Nico could be better, but I would take DeBoer and Milroe right now. Both of them are more proven. DeBoer's won more than Heupel, and Milroe has won more than Nico. But other than that,
who's undefeated in 2024?
It
ain't Milroe.
Who's better? What's a
Nico.
better coach? What's a better offensive coach and quarterback combination in the SEC next year? Which one's better?
Heupel and Nico.
Okay.
And
that's
Kirby
pure projection.
Carson Beck.
I would say Beck and Smart is number 1.
Kiffin and Dart.
I would take DeBoer. Sure. I would take DeBoer and Milroe is a better version of Jackson Dart. I don't understand what you're talking about.
Sarkisian and Ewers.
That's a good one.
Brent Venables, Jackson Arnold.
That's not an offensive coach, and Jackson Arnold hasn't started a football game yet.
Well, he did. He did the bowl game.
That's not a football game.
Do we have to go? Why do we have to go just offense? Why can't we just say coach?
Well, I was trying to. Well, you have to go with the coordinator then. Who's the scheme, the offense, the play caller, like the guy creating it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you're right. I shouldn't put Smart in there. I guess you're right. That needs to be Mike Bobo and Carson Beck. You're right. But if you're right, if we're going to go defense and it's going to be fair,
Billy Napier and Mertz. Mertz was really good, I thought.
I agree, but that's not in the mix. I mean, Drinkowitz and Cook is on that list for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug Shelton. Good
miso
call there.
Soup down there.
Why am I drawing a blank on Mike Elko's offensive coordinator? I'm drawing a total blank on that right now.
Colin Klein.
Oh yeah, I like him.
Elite.
I like him. He's a good play caller. I think it's Kiffin, Dart, Heupel, Nico, DeBoer, Milroe, Sark, Ewers. I think LSU is gonna be better than people think. Kelly and Nussmeier is gonna be solid, but then Smart and Beck. But like again, I would put DeBoer maximizing Milroe's talent near the top of the list. So it's not an air raid. Like I mean, he doesn't run an air raid offense. That's not really what he runs. So
how good was Washington in 22? I'm gonna look that up.
The offense?
No, just.
They were freaking
I'm seeing
good.
some losses here. UCLA, come on. Arizona State. 11-2 just ain't going to cut it at Bama. He's an awful year 1 coach. So there's going to be a drop-off.
I think it's hard to ask anybody to do what Nick Saban did. I don't think that's fair. I don't think
that's the task.
It's fair. But I think it's fair to have high expectations. So I think there's this weird... 10-2 make the playoffs, I think, is probably what you need to do. To sort of
10-2 in the SEC, you should get there. Especially with that logo on your chest, whether they deserve it or not, they'll throw them in there.
Yes, Turd Ferguson, Alabama was 11-2 this year. That is correct, and I think they were.
And they ran Saban's ass
11-2 last year as well. They ran Saban off. I do love that. Lebby. So I find the Browns offense to be utterly fascinating because it's always been limited. It's never been able to get over a championship caliber hump, and the teams with the best players always beat that offense over time, not in every game, but over time. And so with more and more people running it, I'm more and more interested in if it's evolving and gaining the ability to sort of advance itself, if that makes sense, because the 𝙎𝙀𝘾 offense is the offense that is truly, like, when it's run well, that is like that and Kiffin and DeBoer are like the three offenses that no one can stop. And so Baylor's not the offense. Baylor's an offense that gets stopped by better teams normally.
What?
Like South Carolina.
They didn't stop Tennessee. Tennessee scored 38 on the road. That should be good enough to win.
I would call, so Kalen DeBoer being called an air raid is just not, I don't think that's fair to DeBoer or the air raid. I mean, there are certainly principles off of that. There are certainly things that he does off of that. But he also ran an incredibly slow offense at times when he wanted to. They ran the ball like crazy in the games that they needed to, namely Oregon, USC, critical games where they had to run the football. Mike Leach refuses to run the football at any point during his life, almost on purpose. So I don't think you call it, I don't think it's the evolution of the air raid. It's the next evolution of it. It's not 75 pass attempts and 79 pass attempts and 4-yard passing shots. I mean, he was throwing outside the numbers down the field better than anybody in the country. That's not what Mike Leach's system is about. It's just not. So it doesn't mean it doesn't have some elements of it. It just is. It's way more evolved than air raid, because you start mixing in. It's probably Baylor and air raid mixed together. And when you do that, that's when you get sort of the best offenses you got, which is like Lincoln Riley's offense.
I think I can state your case perfectly right here, Braden.
Go for it.
Very good player, Dylan Johnson, right? Mississippi State, then transferred to Washington. He played under Mike Leach and DeBoer here. The first 3 years he played under Leach, 51 carries, 89 carries, 89 carries. And then DeBoer year, 233 carries. I mean, this is not...
How many yards?
This is not air raid. You know what I mean? Not what Mike Leach air raid. Yeah, I thought nearly 1,200 rushing yards, which is more... his 3 years at Mississippi State, Braden, 1,198 rushing yards. 1 year at Washington, 1,195. So just 3 yards less in just one season.
So I think this is really important to note, actually. This is I think that's a really great stat, Mike, and I appreciate you digging that up. When Mike Leach passed away, and I had a chance to work with him, so I wanted to do some extra digging on what made him special. Not as a person, but as a football coach. Like schematically, when he was running those bubble screens, working for Hal Mumme at Kentucky with Tim Couch. And what makes him what made Mike Leach so fantastic was sort of, I think he's the most influential mind in all of football in our generation, not just college, high school, college, pro. I think he's the most influential mind of all time. Of our generation. But when I talk to coaches, I talk to a lot of coordinators around the college game. I talked to a few head coaches around the college game, and I was trying to do digging on, because Mike Leach refused to evolve on his own. It was his choice. Mike Leach refused to add the running game when needed to make the air raid a more difficult offense to stop. Because you have to run the football in 3 situations. You have to run the football when you have to run the football. Short yardage, goal line, bad weather, and a lead. You got to be able to run the football in those situations. And Mike Leach sort of stubbornly refused to do it. And when I asked coaches, what was the next step? What should he have done to evolve his offense to the next level? It always started with Cliff Kingsbury and what he did at Houston and Texas A&M with Johnny Manziel, and Houston running adding the running game in. Then the Baylor system came off of that, and that everyone to a person said that Lincoln Riley was the best offensive scheme off of the air raid system because of its ability to run the football, mixed with its ability to throw the football. And Kalen DeBoer fits into that mold of offense. Steve 𝙎𝙀𝘾 fits into that mold of offense. Lane Kiffin fits into that mold of the offense. And so it really is the air raid evolved into its most potent form, if that makes sense. And that's not from me. That's from coaches in college football, coordinators.
Well said. I don't have anything to add to that. Great.
All right. Number one coach in the SEC is Kirby Smart. No argument there, right? Okay. Okay. All right. All right.
Not Clark Lee.
All right. All right. Number two, who is the second best coach in the SEC currently?
Hell, I don't know. Just let's hear your list. Let's pick apart your list here.
I reluctantly have Brian Kelly and Steve Sarkisian at 2 and 3.
Oh man.
Okay, pick it apart. Go for it.
How drunk were you? You must be cabin fever. That's what they call it, right? You got cabin fever. Sarkisian.
I was driving all around.
Sarkisian, top 2. What has he ever done?
I have Brian Kelly and Steve Sarkisian at 2 and 3. That's my list.
You know, he faces one team in his league that has equal talent to him, and he lost to him this year. All the rest, he's supposed to win. And this is the first year he's done it.
Which one are you talking about?
Oklahoma.
Are you talking about Sarkisian or Kelly?
Sarkisian.
Okay. So you disagree. Who's number 2 for you then?
Well, I don't have a list. I'm just picking yours apart. But Brian Kelly,
that's easy to do.
That's probably a good call.
Okay, all right.
I'm
not saying my list is better
solid
than anybody else's. It's just my opinion. Number 4 on my list. You're going to love this one.
Didn't he go 4-8 one year, though?
What, in like 2016 before he went back to the playoff multiple years?
Get him out of here.
Yeah. Okay. I've got Kalen DeBoer at number 4.
After 2 years in the Power 5, let's just crown his ass. I think he could be higher.
I've never seen a human being contradict themselves in back-to-back sentences.
But I wouldn't put him there. I'm saying he could be.
So you're okay with Brian Kelly at 2. You disagree, it sounds like, with Sark at 3. Where are you putting Kalen DeBoer then? You okay with so are you good with 4? You think he should be higher or lower? Make your case. Use words.
I'd definitely put him lower. He's got to earn it.
Okay. I've got Lane Kiffin at 5.
That's probably fair. I'm still not seeing Hypo here for some reason.
I've got Heupel at 6.
He's pretty elite.
I think that's a line. I think that's the line. He's not elite. He hasn't won anything yet, but I think that's the line.
Orange Bowl, baby. Beat Bama.
God, those Orange Bowls don't fucking mean anything.
Last time Saban stepped into Neyland, he came out a loser.
I think the top 6. Last time Heupel stepped into Faro Field, he lost by 30.
That's a tough place to play.
Yes, it is. It's cold as hell right now.
I think they only lost one game up there this year.
The top 6, in my opinion, are clearly the top 6. Like, they are clearly better than everybody else, and Kirby's clearly number 1. So if you want to argue Brian Kelly, Steve Sarkisian, Kalen DeBoer, Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, I am totally comfortable with whatever order you want to put those guys in. I think DeBoer and Kiffin and Heupel are and Sarkisian are probably the 4 best offensive minds in the conference right now. You can rank them how you'd like to. They have different varying degrees of success on their resume. I think Brian Kelly, it's almost by default that he gets number 2 on my list because he's been around so long. He's the winningest coach in Notre Dame history, a national championship game, 2 playoff appearances, a SEC West division. There's no real, there's no clear number 2. So if you wanted to put Sark at number 2, I'm fine with that. If you wanted to put DeBoer at 2, I'm fine with that. Kiffin has to accomplish a little bit more for me to put him on that level. Heupel needs to accomplish more than to be put on that level. And I would have Eli Drinkwitz at the very next. But what one great year for Drinkwitz is not, again, the other guys have done a little bit more, and Drinkwitz would be at number 7 for me. So
over Hugh,
the 6, I think the top 6, I think are the top 6
over Elko.
My next 3 are
over the guy that you say is the best Kentucky coach of all time, Mark Stoops.
If you don't care about what I think, you don't have to listen to the show. Like, we're just here having fun talking college football. So you're the one signed. You're the one signed into the show. What are you talking about? so I got Drinkwitz at 7.
Mm-hmm.
I got Elko at 8, but that's a little bit of a projection. But what he did at Duke was truly special, truly special. I've got Freeze, Stoops, and Venables all in a group. That's very hard to differentiate. And then I've got Napier at 12, Beamer at 13, Levy at 14, Pittman at 15, Lee at 16. That is sort of my list. I think there's bunches there that are smart debates.
Wait, and you got Clark Lee below Jeff Levy?
Right now, yeah. I got Levy at 14, but you're right. I could put Levy at 16. That's fine.
He's not coached the damn game yet.
When the Levy breaks, we'll see what happens.
Clark Lee's he's 2 upsets, at least.
Well, but Levy's offensive. I mean, Levy's done a lot as a coordinator, and he did a lot as a recruiter.
So did Clark Lee, didn't he, at Notre Dame and
maybe
Wake Forest or something like that?
It's my fucking list. So yeah, I'm fine with Levy at the end. I think the bottom 3 are Levy, Pittman, Lee, and I think Beamer is a slight tick ahead of them. Although we're going to learn a lot about all these guys this year. We're going to learn a lot about them. Tyler, what Braden says, what's the criteria for the full list body? I think it is the body of work with context added in and maybe progress or development that those guys have made. Like Lane Kiffin as the USC coach and the Tennessee coach and the Raiders coach was still a really good coach, but he was clearly not much. He's like a different person today, right? So I think you have to take that into account. Heupel was fired as an offensive coordinator from his alma mater, but he's clearly gotten better. He's clearly evolved. He's clearly learned how to be a better coach and a better leader, and he's a great CEO. So certain things that you do on the way up are different than certain things you do as a head coach, right? And the jobs call for different skill sets even. So it's a generic, broad-based. What's your opinion?
Where did you have Beamer again?
I would have Beamer at 13, right ahead of the bottom 3, which is Levy, Pittman, and Lee, in whatever order you want to put them in. How you feel about that?
I heard something on Feinbaum the other day. You probably disagree with it, but he was talking to old Steve Spurrier. And Spurrier said, do you see this where Napier's got odds to be the next Alabama coach? And Paul said, we're looking at different lists. But he said 3 years ago, he would have been on the list, which sure. I don't think he would have been very high on the list, but I think he would have been on the list. So I think that.
So maybe Mel Tucker would have been on the list too, right?
Just the point being, this changes so drastically in just 2 or 3 years. You know what?
I agree.
It's wild. I mean, Beamer would have been much higher on this list.
Which is to Tyler's.
I think Pittman as well.
Yes, and to Tyler's point, I think that's ultimately
a lot lower.
Right. I think that's why you have to try to not overreact too much to the short term and try to look at the entire body of work, which includes a whole lot of things. Again, for Lane Kiffin, it includes a whole lot of stuff. It's a whole lot of stuff that include, like with Elko, it's sort of like, all right, we know he's a really great defensive coordinator. We know that he's a great defensive mind. But then what he accomplished at Duke, can he do that at A&M? I don't know. We think so. They certainly think so. They've paid him a lot of money to do so. But we don't know. We haven't seen it yet. But what he did at Duke was nothing short of amazing. So is that worth more than what Stoops has done at Kentucky? I don't know. He's done it at Kentucky for much longer than Elko did it at Duke. But they were basically the same guy. Great defensive coordinator, sort of aw shucks guys, kind of funny off the air, good defensive minds, culture guys, very similar individuals. One guy's done it a lot longer at a basketball school, and the other guy did it for 2 years at a basketball school. So I don't how do we know? How do we know who's better? I'll lean Elko just as a slight tiny margin, but
But could you also argue that's because there's unknown with Elko? He could win a national championship, and we're sitting here saying, well, maybe that's just, whereas Mark Stoops probably never will at Kentucky, but there's no given that Mike Elko is going to win 10 games multiple times at A&M.
Right.
But
exactly.
Stoops has done it. So he should get credit for that.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. Liquid Flame says, wasn't Kiffin the head coach of the Raiders? Yes, he was the youngest head coach in NFL history, which means somebody liked him for something. And honestly, in the 15 years that Tennessee wandered the desert, that 2009 team was probably the best coach team that Tennessee had in that entire time that they wandered the desert. And then he left. USC was good for a quick, hot second, and then it came crumbling down because he wasn't mature enough to handle it. He went to Alabama. Some would say he wasn't all that mature there either, but he has grown and learned and evolved and matured. and is now running a program that has won 10 games in the regular season at Ole Miss, which is a record. So you kind of have to see the evolution and give credit to the evolution, which is why I can't put him at number 1, 2, or 3. But it's why I think he's better than like 𝙎𝙀𝘾 𝙁𝙊𝘾 Stoops, Venables, because I think he's accomplished a lot more. That's why I think he's a better offensive mind than some of those other guys. So,
do you agree with Andrew here? I don't understand this comment. Kirby's going to get out coached every year in the playoff.
I'm not sure by who though. Like, what is he talking about? Are you just trolling Andrew?
I mean, he struggled right off the bat, but as does everybody against Bama, you know?
Are you talking about just against Alabama?
I mean, I'm trying to think of when Kirby Smart's sitting here getting outclassed. I mean, Dan Mullen got him once, right?
He made a bad 4th down decision against Vanderbilt in like 2015 or something.
16.
But like, yeah, other than that. SH says Cooper has never lost a CFP game. That's sort of the end of the conversation there at that point.
Wait, no, he's certainly lost a college football playoff game. Tua, hello. That was Kirby.
Oh yeah.
That was
in the championship game.
I would say he got out. I don't know if out-coached is even the right word. I mean,
no, Saban made the greatest call in the history of college football by going to Tua at halftime.
But you got that lead. You should hold it.
Yeah, no, that's true. I don't know. Venables is the interesting one, and we're going to get to him in a second. But Venables is interesting to me because I don't know exactly what he is yet. Elite resume as a defensive coordinator. Clearly a jump in year 2 at Oklahoma from year 1. But I like 𝙁𝙀𝘾, like you said, if we had done this list at the beginning of last year, 𝙁𝙀𝘾 would be bottom 4, bottom 5. So I can't take one 10-win season when Lane Kiffin's done 2 of them. And Heupel's done multiple of those at UCF and at Tennessee.
Beamer's never lost a playoff game either, says Roger.
It's a very good point, Roger.
Something to think about.
Very, very good point. Josh Heupel, Shane Beamer, Billy Napier, Eli 𝙁𝙀𝘾, Mark Stoops, Brent Venables, Mike 𝙎𝙀𝘾, all combined undefeated in the college football playoff.
Do you think it's fair or not to look at, the hell's that guy's name? Ryan Day, Ohio State coach. I mean, by virtually every measure, he's done a great job at Ohio State, short of one damn game. And if he loses that again, they'll probably run his ass off, even if he goes undefeated in the rest. Is that a fair comp, you think, for DeBoer? Who
meaning what he has to accomplish at Alabama?
In 3 years, let's say he wins every damn game except for when he faces Georgia, which is, I think that's realistic to sit here and project. Not that that will happen or anything like that, but let's say he, doesn't win a national championship, loses to Georgia twice or 3 times or what have you, but wins every other game. That would they run his ass off, you think?
Well, this is what's fascinating. I mean, short answer, if we played in the last year's system, yes, right? Like that. Like Ryan Day's record is extraordinary. What is he, like 65-4 or something like that? 65-5. I'm guessing off the top of my head here, but maybe it's like 55-5.
Pulling it up.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. But because I think it's a great question, because Ryan Day, unfortunately, and
56-8.
56-8. That's extraordinary. Danny says Ryan Day looks like a botched creative character from a Bethesda game. Here's the thing. I do think there's no way that Ryan Day doesn't dye his beard and hair. There's just no way that's the natural color of his beard. That's not possible. But his record is extraordinary. But to your point, 0-3 against Michigan in the last 3. He did get to a national championship game, but he's lost every other playoff game, and they got beat by Bama in that game, albeit a COVID year. You are judged at Ohio State in those games. That's the way you are judged. It's whether you like it or not, that's how you're judged. You don't get judged at Ohio State by how you play against Indiana, Rutgers, and Maryland.
How about this? Outside of the just regular season games, right?
Okay.
You said he's lost to Michigan 3 times?
The last 3, yep.
That means he has in 1, 2, well, let's just do full seasons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 5 full seasons, Braden, he's lost 1 regular season game, other than the Michigan ones.
And that was to Oregon at home about 3 or 4 years ago.
Get his ass out of here.
But you see, here's ultimately the point with Ryan Day. How about this? I bet you I could do this off the top of my head. I bet you I could do this. 8 losses, right? In how many years? 6 years?
6. And in 2018, for some reason, he's 3-0. He must have been interim or something. I don't
Maybe.
know. I
Okay,
don't know what's up with that.
eight total losses. One was Oregon regular season. 3 of those were Michigan. That's 4.
Mm-hmm.
Lost to Bama in the national championship game. That's 5. Lost to Georgia, which, by the way, was the best game Georgia really had all of last year, other than Missouri, maybe. It was Missouri and Ohio State that played Georgia better than anybody last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an eventual national champion. So that's 3 of these that he's lost to the eventual national champion, at least.
Right.
Because that's Bama, Georgia, Bama in 20, Ohio State in 22, and then Michigan this year. So that's how many have I got now? 3, 4, 5, 6.
You're just missing 2.
I'm missing 2. And would have been the 2021... They didn't make the playoff in 2021, so I don't know if they lost a bowl game that I don't give a shit about. I don't care about other bowl games that don't count. So what am I missing? They lose in the playoff in 19.
They did to Clemson.
Clemson, yeah,
and then very recent Mizzou.
Oh, that's right. That one doesn't count, but yes,
that's the last.
Counts for Missouri. Counts for Missouri.
Right.
But the point, I think your ultimate point is, what if Kalen DeBoer is 58-8, and 3 of those losses are to Georgia, and 2 of those losses are in the playoff, and then there's one other random one along the way somewhere, like
Tennessee.
Tennessee gets them, yeah, whatever.
Every year,
I don't know what you do at that point. I think it's okay for Alabama to judge a coach at the same level that Ohio State judges a coach, but at the same time, the Big Ten doesn't have the same depth of schedule as the SEC, so I don't know.
But
Alabama,
if Michigan held that standard, they wouldn't have won this latest national championship, right? Because didn't Harbaugh struggle?
The patience, you mean? Yeah, no, yeah. You got to have some. I think you need to have more patience in the Big Ten. But
maybe this is what do they say? A loser mentality. Maybe it's a loser mentality. But if my coach is 56-8. And we made 2 national championships, and we made a couple other playoffs. As long as there's no scandal, I can't imagine running that guy off, because he's going to win eventually, I would think, or at least keep chopping at that, or at least keep getting us there. You know.
And here's the thing, and this is the hard comparison, right? Like Harbaugh, we kind of always knew he was either going to win a national championship or go to the NFL at some point. Like that was going to happen at some point. He's too volatile to not explode. Like Hugh Freeze at Auburn. Hugh Freeze might win a national championship. I don't think he will, but he could. But it's going to explode. It's going to blow up in their face at some point. The same way Jimbo Fisher did. The same way, Coach O, and like these guys that aren't able to look at what's happening at Auburn right now. What happened? It's already nuts. What's happening at Auburn? It's too volatile. You can't. It's not sustainable. You can win. You can pop up and win big once, but you can't do it sustainably. I think Alabama, Georgia's not. This is the problem. Like Kirby Smart is not Jim Harbaugh. Kirby Smart is not this. I don't know. Harbaugh is such a one-of-one guy. Like Kirby Smart's not. Kirby Smart could be the head coach of Georgia for 15 more years. So if you're Ryan Day and you keep losing to Jim Harbaugh for 15 more years, yeah, you're going to get your ass run out of town. But Kirby, they kind of know that Jim Harbaugh was. You had to go sometime. He was going to go to the NFL.
Well, I just looked it up. I didn't realize Ohio State was this pathetic, Braden, given their bravado. They've got 2 national championships in the last 50 years.
02 and 14, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
they got 30 more years to lose them before they can get mad at this man, I think.
That's one more than Tennessee. That's one more than Auburn. But
Tennessee ain't running the hype
Florida.
I'm just trying to figure out why they're championship or bust.
Because they never
win them.
Do you know how many losing seasons they've had in the last 50 years? Do you know?
I have no idea.
1, and it was because they went 6-7 in a bowl game.
Well, Ryan Day's not losing. We just went through it. It's 56-8.
No, but you asked why the expectations are that high. It's because they're recession. Ohio State is recession proof. They are the only program in college football that has not had a losing season in 50 years. They had one when Luke Fickell took over as the interim coach after Urban Meyer, and they went 6-7. They're the only program that's done it. Tennessee went 0-8 recently in the conference.
Remember that
in the conference.
I think we threw those records out. There was
Auburn went 0-8 after winning a national championship. Teams go up and down. Ohio State's never had that. They never go down ever.
Good for them.
But
good for them.
But all right, you want to talk Oklahoma here? All right, here's my list. Here's my list. Kirby Smart 1, Brian Kelly 2, Steve Sarkisian 3, Kalen DeBoer 4, Lane Kiffin 5, Josh Heupel 6, Eli Drinkowitz 7, Mike Elko 8, Brent Venables 9, Hugh Freeze 10, Mark Stoops 11, Billy Napier 12, Shane Beamer 13. I'll move Lebby down to 16 and go Pittman 14, Lee 15, Lebby 16, purely because it's a question mark. That's my list. So that's
Couldn't be more wrong.
That's fine. That's what the internet's for. All right, Brent Venables has a chance to move up this list very quickly if they're good this year. I don't think if you go over to the 440 Sports YouTube page, if you're not already there, and check out my long conversation with Josh McQuiston. He and I sort of got into the state of the program, how it's evolved over 20 years since Bob Stoops won a national championship in 1999, the Lincoln Riley years, into the Brent Venable years. How good is the NIL collective infrastructure behind the scenes? Can they recruit along the defensive line? And what are people excited about from an Oklahoma standpoint? So a lot of stuff, and I want you to just ask questions. But Venables, they one of the most disappointing seasons of the year 2 years ago. Preseason top 10 team, losing record. Not a lot of times does that happen. Once every couple of years in college football. But they bounce back and they win 10 games this year. The problem is that if you listen to that conversation, Mike, there's the expectations from Josh on this particular Oklahoma team, and he's covered them for over 20 years. He didn't seem all that playoff 10-11 win type of expectation. He said more like 7-5, 8-4 with how tough the schedule could be is a possibility. I don't know how Oklahoma would take to that, but if like they have a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, no offensive lineman returning, and they're joining the SEC. So while I think they're built for success, I think there need to maybe be some pumping the brakes in 2024 potentially. What'd you make of it?
Well, what if Jackson Arnold, their freshman quarterback, that you totally disrespected his performance in the bowl game, what if he's awesome? Because he flashed some awesomeness. Now, he flashed being a true freshman in that bowl game too. They had 6 turnovers, and a lot of that was on his shoulders. But again, first start, they fooled him with some of the coverages and whatnot. But could he take a big step forward? And
yes.
I mean, any step forward, clearly, because he's not really been a starter. What if let's say he's the top 5 quarterback in the SEC, which that's probably a lot given the veterans they're returning. But
could Nico be a top 5 quarterback in the SEC?
I think could be better than that even.
Then Arnold can too. They're both equal pedigree. 5-star recruit, number 1 player in the country, kind of good.
So while I think it's wise to have reasonable expectations given all the unknown of playing in the SEC, that's obviously a great equalizer. If he's awesome, I think there's no reason they can't win double-digit games.
So, and I will say, while Josh was pumping the brakes on expectations, one of the things he said to me in that interview was that Jackson Arnold is as special a player that has been on OU's campus since before like Lincoln Riley got there. He basically is saying this is one of the best players at quarterback to ever step onto their campus, which again is why is why Dylan Gabriel is in Oregon. Danny says, "Did you watch those 2 guys play in bowl games?" Guys. Bowl games aren't real life. Did anybody watch Joe Milton play in a bowl game? It's not real life. It's great that Nico looked great. I think Nico's going to be better. My point is that they are the same thing right now. They are a 5-star recruit, elite freshman who got to play in a bowl game and is going to start is going to be a starter next year. And they get to go head to head in the first SEC game of the year. So I think Nico's better, yes. But what my point is that when people I respect cover Oklahoma and are looking at this kid every day saying, look, this is the best player we've seen at this position since before Kyler Murray. Like, that's a big statement. Guys don't say that stuff just to say it. Like, it's the same reason Tennessee people are saying that about Nico, right? Like, this is the best hyped player that we've seen since Peyton Manning. You don't say that on accident. They
had a freshman receiver, too, break the all-time record for touchdowns caught in a season. True freshman. I believe his name's Nick Anderson. It's a nice little weapon to have there, too.
They have no offensive line. They got to get the offensive line fixed. That's the problem at Oklahoma. I do think the infrastructure of the program, much like Texas, is set up for success in the SEC. But I think there will be growing pains.
Really good offensive line coach, too.
Who's the offensive line coach?
Bo Beatno or something. I butchered his name, but he's been there forever, right?
I think Texas is better suited to win immediately, but I think both of them are set up to win long term. But I think there's going to be some like, I
There
think
it
you
is.
have,
Bill
yes, there you go.
Bedenbaugh.
Thank you. I think excuse me. I think you have to add a loss for going from the Big 12 schedule to the SEC schedule, if not a second loss.
Want me to throw the schedule up here?
And if you're adding a freshman quarterback who I think could be elite, there's going to be there might be a game or two in which you have to learn. And that's going to be the case for Nico as well. What's fun about the SEC this year is that we've talked about this. There are a lot of established.
I see a lot of wins there.
A lot of established star quarterbacks at good places.
A lot of
Jalen
tricky
Milroe.
Games too, though. Tulane week 3.
Look,
new coach, so right.
You got Quinn Ewers, you got Brady Cook, you got Jalen Milroe, you got Jackson Dart, you got Nico, and you got and LSU and Auburn. That is a brutal schedule. Brutal schedule. Tulane and Houston is no joke in the non-conference. So I think Oklahoma 8-4 would be a good year. I think for a freshman, and if Arnold shows that he's supposed to be the guy and is clearly the guy, and they go 8-4 against that schedule, and they lose to, let's say, Bama, Texas, Tennessee, and LSU, let's say, I don't think there's any shame in that season for Oklahoma. And 10-2 is on the table if Jackson Arnold is great.
Looks like an SEC schedule to me. Welcome to the league, boys.
That's a nasty schedule, man.
Yep.
Exactly, Andrew. Only 5 guarantees. There's not, and I don't think the guarantees are not always what we always think that games are guaranteed wins or losses on schedules, and then the season gets here and crazy shit happens. So,
right, Mizzou was a guaranteed win for a lot of people this year till they actually had to face that team.
Yep, I agree. If OU goes 10-2 with this schedule, Brent Venables should get $10 million a year. I tend to agree with you, and that's from an OU fan. So respect for self-awareness and being objective. I appreciate that from fans. I know that's not.
I'm not used to that.
Fan is
in the SEC. You're gonna have to burn that.
Fan is not short for logical or reasonable. It is short for fanatic. It's short for fanatic. So otherwise, I think Oklahoma is in a interest. I think both Texas and Oklahoma are in really healthy spots. I trust Steve Sarkisian and I trust Texas's roster more right now today than Oklahoma by a pretty good chunk. But I like where Oklahoma's going. So,
how big of an issue is it replacing both coordinators though, as they're making this transition? And they lost Lebby because he got a head coaching job. So I'm not knocking them, not saying it was a disaster. Defense was a little rough. I never liked that Ted Roof hire, but
yeah,
Brent Venables knows a hell of a lot more about defense than I do. Now he's hiring someone that he's worked with before. How big of a question mark is that for you?
I mean, I think transitioning away from a starting quarterback and a coordinator, and again losing almost all. I think it's all 5 starters on the offensive line are gone. Doing all of that at one time and moving into the SEC is not a recipe for success. But Brent Venables is improving the defense. They've got a lot of guys on that side of the ball coming back, and they took a major step forward from year 1 to year 2. So there is some progress here. But as Gash says, we want the smoke. Let's find out early. I agree. Take your lumps now. Change your coordinator, put in the freshman quarterback, move into the SEC, play the hard schedule. All that shit will benefit you in 2025. And
Seth Luttrell, the new coordinator, he was there. He was an analyst, so it's not like totally foreign to what they're doing. But
and a guy with head coaching experience at North Texas. He's been around this area of the country for a long time. Like he's a pretty solid coordinator. I don't think he's an elite coordinator, but he's pretty solid. But I think the defense, you don't worry about it as much because Venables is the guy on that side of the ball, and they're recruiting better on that side of the ball than they have in a while. And I think that is ultimately, when I talked to Josh, Oklahoma was known for its elite defensive line play under the first era of Bob Stoops from like 99 to like 2009. They were known for great defenses. And then when Gerald McCoy left, big-time recruit, 5-star kid, defensive lineman, elite player, after he left, they never really started recruiting that defensive line the same way. And I think that Venables is trying to get him back to that. And I think that's where they can you got to do that in the SEC. You got to do it in the SEC if you want to win at the highest level.
Can we pick one upset for Oklahoma on their schedule?
Bad or good? Like they lose or they win?
No, I guarantee. We're picking the Sooners to win a game. Well, they'll likely be an underdog next season.
All right, so they'll be an underdog against Texas and Alabama for sure. I don't know about. I don't know if they're an underdog at Ole Miss or Missouri. It depends on how the season goes.
And I think at LSU they're an underdog.
But yes, everyone in the comments is saying Texas. Yes, the Texas-Oklahoma game is constantly an upset. Charlie Strong beat a very good Bob Stoops team, so I think losing to Texas would be an upset probably. So that would be an upset or beating Texas would be an upset. So I think that would qualify. But Texas might be out for revenge. I think ultimately, I don't know. Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, those three. I don't know who would be favored in those games right now. Probably the other team, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'm going Bama.
Go. I love it. Go for it. Defending SEC champion, Alabama.
You'll beat them.
All right. Anyway, we're gonna have deep dives. I've got a big one coming for you guys about the state of Alabama. So we got that one coming up this week. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to dive into the state of Alabama, not Alabama Crimson Tide, but the entire state of football. So you're going to want to tune in for that one. That one's coming up this week on the YouTube page, 440 Sports over there. Of course.
Let me ask you this. I just thought of something real quick.
Michael and Stephen Lass. Yeah, go ahead.
Will Alabama, do you think, will they still have that, I don't know, what is the word, allure that that they have right now with under Nick Saban, or do you think that's lost with DeBoer?
The aura?
Yeah, I guess there you go.
No, I don't. I think it's as long as Nick Saban's kind of like the ghost of Nick Saban is wandering around the facility aimlessly. Maybe that's the aura you're talking about, is he's just still around, which I think is interesting. But I don't know. I think the answer is no. I immediately look at Alabama as a team that you can beat, but I also think they're going to be better in certain places. I think they're going to be better on offense. So it's going to be interesting to see. But absolutely, Nick Saban can't leave and have it like they don't have the same. You put on like a horror movie and you just know that your shoulders are tense. Like. You're just like tense on the couch watching a movie. Like when Alabama plays and you play against Alabama, you're always fucking tense. You know what I mean? You're just like,
What happens?
That's gone for now until he proves it.
What happens if he loses 3 of the first 6 games? Does Nick Saban step back in and fix it?
Buildings start burning in Tuscaloosa? I don't know what you want me to say.
Can we see that interim Nick Saban?
No, that seems unlikely. I mean, you talk to folks too. I talk to a lot of the same folks. It strikes me as that this guy is he's not lingering around to come back. He's lingering because he wants to make sure the transition is complete, and that I don't think he's around there at the end of this summer. I think he knows by the time camp opens up that he's got to be out of there. So. He's got to be out of there. Thank you guys for the compliments. A couple of you guys, SH, a few others, Liquid Flames giving us subscription, and of course complimenting the page. We do appreciate you guys. That's really we really appreciate it. We're going to do a lot of deep dive stuff into the SEC. So we think that this is why Mike and I started working together, is that we wanted to offer a complete holistic experience on the YouTube pages here of being an SEC football fan, and hopefully that's what's happening. So tune into his appearance on Feinbaum today. Thank you guys all for listening and for watching and for rating and for reviewing. And please, it would also be a big help if you could share the product. If you do like it, or if you hate it, share the product. That's fine too. We do appreciate it. I'm honored. I don't know who it was that came on here and said no one cares about my opinions. No, you're right. No one does. But the fact that you took the time to log on to YouTube, watch the show, and then make that comment made my entire day. I'm so absolutely ecstatic that you took the time to tell me that I suck. I do appreciate it. Mike, always a pleasure, my man. Good to see you. You can follow him all over all the platforms at SEC Mike, of course. You can get to me at Braden Gall. Subscribe, 440 Sports. We do appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Stay warm out there. Stay safe out there. And we'll talk to you next Tuesday right here on SEC Football.